Hi everyone, I am Anisa Nurualani, and in this video we're going to talk about the topic of language acquisition and learning in the semantic subject. Now let's begin by examining the introduction of language acquisition and learning. Language as a tool for human communication is a creative system of words and phrases. It is built upon a finite set of sounds phonemes that, when combined, generate an infinite number of meaningful words and sentences. This creativity is evident in the constant evolution of language, as new words and expressions emerge to reflect changing times and cultures. For instance, generations like Alpha and Z have their unique linguistic markers, such as sigma, skibidi, salty, and sigil. While these two concepts may seem similar, there are significant differences between language acquisition and language learning. Language acquisition is unconscious and typically occurs during childhood, whereas language learning is conscious and often takes place in formal settings such as schools. Language acquisition is a natural process that occurs through exposure and interaction. Children acquire language simply by listening, speaking, and interacting in that language. Language learning, on the contrary, involves a formal and structured process, such as taking language classes, using textbooks, or attending language courses. The goal of language acquisition is communication and functional understanding of the language, whereas language learning focuses on grammar, correct sentence formation, and vocabulary usage. Language acquisition typically occurs during the critical period of language development, when children's brains are highly sensitive to language input. Language learning can occur at any age, both in children and adults. However, language learning requires more effort, especially when learning a new language as an adult. To further differentiate between language acquisition and language learning, a summary of the differences between the two processes is presented in the table below. However, the process of language acquisition is not that simple. There are several stages that are unconsciously undergone when we are still children. These stages are passed through a natural process without coercion from anyone. In the stages of language acquisition, it is related to behaviorist theory. Language acquisition in children begins at the prelingual stage, the stage before mastering language. This stage occurs from the age of 6 to 8 weeks to 1 year. At this stage, babies will only cry as a means of communication. Ostwald and Peltzman argued that crying is one of the first ways babies can communicate with the wider world. Herlich, 1978-79, quoted from Superman's article, 2022. At the age of 6 months, there is a process of babbling, which is making sounds in the form of syllables. Darjuijo, 2012-197, quoted from Superman's article, 2022. Entering the age of 1 year, children begin to enter the phase of word acquisition. At this age, children begin to realize that speech sounds are related to meaning. In this phase, children begin to utter their first words. Furthermore, children enter the stage of sentence acquisition, syntactic acquisition. At this stage, a child can begin to utter one-word utterances to convey something. It is only when they reach the age of 2 that children begin to use sentences with a series of words. This stage is the early stage of syntactic construction in children. This is the beginning of how a child can combine two words to form a sentence. At the age of 3, it is a stage where children acquire language, especially vocabulary, very rapidly. This is because at this age, children have already received education at the playgroup level. Finally, language acquisition is a natural process in childhood when acquiring language through social interaction. This usually occurs when children understand the first language or mother tongue. While language learning is the process of acquiring a language formally and consciously. This process occurs when we actively learn a language with more structured instruction.